Welcome, everybody, to the Beginner's Guide to Flower Photography. It's great to see you all here. I'm Marion Owen, and I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you who sent in photographs for me to critique. So we're going to have a photo review session at the end. So I'm really happy you're here. I'm going to open up the chat for one thing. Right. And meanwhile, let me know in the chat where you're from. Where do you take pictures? Where do you garden? Where you hang up your hoe? And meanwhile, let's give a little rundown of what we're going to do today. This is what we're going to do. I'll start with intros and get to know who's here. And then we'll get into the photography training. And I think you're going to love it. And the reason, not just because a bunch of pretty pictures, but because what you're going to learn today, you can actually apply to every aspect of photography, everything you take pictures of. So flowers just happens to be a fabulous thing to take pictures of. Remember, they don't care if you're having a bad hair day. So anyway, let me know where you garden from, and otherwise we'll get started here in just a second. And let's see here. Got to hit the right buttons. Right. And okay. Here we go. So one more thing I wanted to tell you too is we're going to do a little Q&A session at the end if you have any questions. And remember, we're going to do a photo review session. So I've selected 3, maybe 4 images that photographers sent in, and then I've gone ahead and previewed and made some comments. So we're all going to learn together. So let's dive in, and here we go. Flowers are one of the most popular subjects to photograph in the world. But you know what I absolutely love about taking pictures of flowers? Not only are they drop dead beautiful and they make everybody happy, but they don't care if you're having a bad hair day. And they don't run away from you. That said, whether you take pictures of flowers with a camera like this, or with a smartphone, or anything in between, and everything in between, I just want you to know you're in the right place. Today, we're going to have fun. We're going to unravel any mystery about taking pictures of flowers so that you can come back with wonderful images of roses and poppies and things you love and share with your family. So let's dive in with a simple truth. In that, in life, gardening, photography, some things change and some things stay the same. Here's an example. If you look at a box camera like that, or a view camera, and a point and shoot like that, and smartphones, they all have something in common. And that is, there's a sensor of some sort, or a film plate, and there's a light tight box, and there's a hole or a lens on the other end. Simple, simple. We're going to keep this very simple today. But I want to give you a photo reality check to start things off. The oldest photograph is less than 200 years old, yet now 3.2 billion images are uploaded daily. In other words, 10% of all the pictures we have were taken in the past 12 months. Heck, that's a lot of photos. So we ask ourselves, what makes one photo better than another? It boils down to one word: composition. Yep, you might have heard about this grade school, high school, college, or even studying photography. Edward Weston, friend of Ansel Adams, said consulting the rules of composition before taking a photograph is like consulting the laws of gravity before going for a walk. So we're going to dive into composition. And for some of you, this will be a review. For others, it'll be new stuff. I know for me, every time I go through this, and I've taught photography for 40 years, I learn something new or I reinforce something I already know and I get re-jazzed about it. So number one, most importantly, is composition really is a matter of personal taste. There's no black and white. There's no right and wrong. But it doesn't mean you have permission to become a lazy photographer. A lazy photographer is one that just pushes that button over and over again and just prays to the Almighty that you'll get one good picture out of all that. A composition that works well clearly conveys your message, where a composition that does not clearly convey your message only confuses the viewer. Now, we're going to go through the bones of composition and design. As gardeners, you know what it means to establish the bones of gardening. When you're starting out with a new plot of land or putting in a new raised bed or a landscaped area, always start with the bones of shrubs and trees, and then you follow up with the annuals and perennials. First off, line shape, form, texture, and pattern. Now, line is the strongest element of design. Our eyes naturally follow lines. We line dance, we stand in line at the airport, we stand in line to extract money. Our eyes naturally follow lines, which means where you place lines in your compositions affect how people travel around your photos, like follow the yellow brick road. But there's all kinds of lines, thank goodness, how fun. Straight, diagonal, curvy, swervy, zigzaggy, loops. This next photo, I'm going to show you how we use lines to help people travel through our pictures. And by the way, showing you this image, we're going to be using examples here that are not just about photos. I want you to stay awake, and it's good retraining for your brain, right? Anyway, this is a boat that's being set back in the water here in Kodiak, Alaska. And here's a method where I'm using lines that you see in this image to bring your attention to there. You see how that works? So lines guide the viewer to where you want them to go. That's your mantra. Wavy lines of these bleeding heart stems lead you to the greenhouse. Lines created by these bags, so to speak, of dried flower arrangements tell you, I want you to look at this person. These leaves tell the viewer, I want you to look at this boat. Another example we saw in the very beginning, these folks that are taking pictures of the blue poppies, their arms and cameras form lines like this that point to the blue poppies. Now here's an example of a soft kind of line, a shadow that brings your attention to the crow. Here's your mantra. Lines guide the viewer to what you want them to look at. Like travel through your garden. Now the next pair of images, you get a kick out of this. Here is a sow. She is helping her cub, okay? Just kind of telling her cub to stay close. But in this next shot, this is a subtle way of bringing your attention to the cub, because most of us read from left to right. So I'm using the curve of her back and then down to her head to bring your attention to the cub. See how that works? Very subtle, very powerful. The next bones of composition is shape. Now shapes are seen in two dimensions. Our brain uses shapes to identify objects, primarily using silhouettes. So silhouettes are the strongest and simplest shapes to recognize. Case in point, silhouettes of the trees here and the branches. Our brain goes, oh yeah, tree. We see the silhouette. This next image, which was taken of a sunrise view or an early morning view of the side of a cruise ship, there are only two people in this frame. The one on the right is a shadow, but it's still a silhouette. So at first glance, you might think there's three people there. These crazy surfers here, February in Alaska, we know that they're people because they're a mature image. The silhouettes are very strong. Simple shapes, they trigger different emotional responses. So, what is your favorite shape? Maybe you like pyramids or triangles just because they kind of bring about this strength and strong foundation. Or circles, as in eternity. We have classic shapes like leaves or snowflakes. I like to take pictures of snowflakes in the winter, so to me this is a really special classic shape. Now by repeating shapes, you can tie elements together. See? So from shapes, we go to form. Now when you add light and shadows to shape, now you get form. And you get three-dimensional objects. Here's an example. These tulips, these pink tulips, all in a row here, nice design, but it's flat. And when you add light and shadows, now you get the three dimensions that I'm talking about. Okay? So from form, we go to one of my favorites, which is texture. Texture can be fuzzy, soft, rough, sticky, prickly. Thing is though, the direction and quality of light affects how you represent texture. I'll show you what I mean. This is very soft light, which brings out all these different textures in here. You've got the sundew, the carnivorous plant that is now consuming this dragonfly. So you've got the delicate legs and wings of the dragonfly. You've got the sticky kind of look of the sundew. Different kind of broccoli, kind of textured. And here is a sea lion from Kodiak, by the way. And so soft a texture. You just want to take your hand and go across her head and just say, hi. Just the opposite of that is what I experienced when I was photographing cactus at Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument in southern Arizona. Now the surprise for me, so expect surprises whenever you're out taking pictures of flowers or anything. The surprise for me was when I went around to the other side and their rim lighting that hit it and they turned red, which was just a phenomenal, very fun, exciting thing to have happen. The next bones of composition and design is pattern. Now, looking for patterns is a lot like going on a treasure hunt. I often give myself assignments. Today, I'm just going to look for patterns. Now, when you notice patterns, then ask yourself, should I repeat the pattern or break it? Here are some examples of what I mean. Repeating the pattern, like these strings of salmon strips getting ready to get in the smoker. That's a repeating of the pattern versus these yellow tulips, and you've got one red tulip kind of in the middle of this sea of yellow. Here's another example of breaking the pattern. These gulls, I just waited until one of the gulls turned to look at me. So it's breaking the pattern. So give yourself an assignment. The next bones of composition and design we're going to cover are color, simplicity, and horizontal versus vertical. Now for color, all around us, feeling blue? Are you green with envy? Did you get the red carpet treatment at the restaurant? Color carries messages and meanings and weight and impact. We know about the color wheel. You might remember it from your grade school. Across, the colors that are across from each other, say orange and blue. These are complementary colors. And they create the most kind of dynamic bing in your images. For example, this pumpkin right here against the blue jacket. Now, seeing this, you'll never cut a jack-o'-lantern or even pick out a pumpkin the same way again. I go for the nose first. And the eyes, by the way, those are black-eyed peas. Here's an example of complementary colors is this steeple, this Russian Orthodox church here in Kodiak, and the yellow splash of yellow in the foreground. Those are dandelions. And these dandelions are actually positioned on purpose in this location because they're solving a problem for me. These dandelions are covering up chain link fence, parked cars, people walking around, and 55-gallon drums of fuel because there's a fuel farm nearby. Red and green across the color wheel from each other, another example of complementary colors. And then you have analogous colors. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Now these are colors that are adjacent to each other. All right, so here is blues and purples. The next one we're going to see is yellows, oranges, and reds. As in this photograph of lilies, backlit lilies. And the secret to this photograph is two things. Have the sprinkler running and a shutter speed of a 60th of a second. And that is what produced the length of those water droplets that I found attractive. Another analogous color combination are light greens and the darker green in the shadows. And so never underestimate the power of a shadow. Have fun. Now we're going to go to simplicity and space. Simple images have greater impact, right? Remember that. Simple is sweet. Keep it simple, silly. Just a single flower. In this next pair of images, I'm going to show you how I worked into more of a simple photograph. So I'm down at the at Seattle's Pike Place Market. All the vendors are setting up their stalls for the day. And I talked to this young lady and I said, "Hey, can I photograph you?" She said, "Sure, no problem." So I took some pictures and I checked my composition and I found that this area here was a little distracting. So later I cropped it out so your attention goes to her. See the difference? Now, for those of you who are writers or aspiring writers, there's a fabulous book called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. And I refer to this quite often when I was working on stories for Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul. And I came across this statement by Zinsser, and I thought, wow, photography. The secret of good photography is to strip every picture to its cleanest components. Remember that. Keep it simple. Like this eagle flying by our house, holding a twig, taking it to the nest, must have been like redecorating season. Just simple background, a white sky. So how to simplify your images? Number one, ask yourself, what do I like about this scene? And then look at each element. If it doesn't add to your story, get rid of it. Here's how to actually simplify your image. One of the best and easiest ways to simplify your images is by zooming in with your feet or your lens, whatever it takes. Zoom in closer to fill the frame with only part of the scene, like that. Another way to simplify your scene is to start by simplifying the background. Now, flowers are often surrounded by other plants or have an, say, ugly fence behind them. So what you can do, we're going to go through this step by step. You can position a plain card, fabric, or even a board behind the flower, like this. These are daffodils, and behind it I had a greenhouse, and I had some supports for other plants. It was kind of messy. So I took a piece of tie-dye fabric, and I just suspended it behind the flowers, and then took the picture. Number two, just get closer and fill the frame. Here's what I mean. Here's a gazania flower in my greenhouse, and pretty busy in there. I've got tomatoes growing in a cage, and I got a pot there, black pot, and another window box behind it. So what I did was I got closer and filled the frame. Simplify. The other thing you can do, like number 4 here, to simplify the background, is to shoot from a low angle. Here's a great example, and one that I planned ahead of time. When I say planned ahead of time, I actually planted these daisies so that I could get on my back or my belly and position clouds, or in this case the sun, right where I wanted it. So not only are they lovely in that they're backlit, but I've got the starburst of a sun shining through. By the way, if you want to accomplish this kind of starburst look to the sun, then set your camera at a high number of aperture, as in f/16 or f/22. One of the best ways to simplify your images is to use shallow depth of field. It's one of the most powerful tools for accomplishing this. Now, a shallow depth of field can eliminate background clutter and draw the viewer's attention to what's important. Like this. Early spring flower, you can see where the background is blurred, the green and the white. So it brings your attention to the flowers themselves, right? Or this puffin. See, I promised I wasn't going to show you just flower pictures. So this puffin, horned puffin holding a fish, getting ready to fly to the nest. I'm bringing the attention to the puffin by using shallow depth of field. What's behind the puffin and what's in front of the puffin is blurred. So I'm telling you, look at the puffin. Another pair of images for you is this iris, and behind is some grasses, some wild grasses. It's a little busy, and I'm showing you this pair of images because in my 40 years of teaching photography, it can be kind of confusing thinking about depth of field and aperture. Let's see, is it the bigger opening or the smaller opening? I don't know which one it is for shallow or deep depth of field. I can tell you, big number, in his case, aperture of f/16, big depth of field. Small number, like 5.6 here, small depth of field. See how nice and blurred the background is? What a difference. Your attention, just goes right to that wild iris. Or here, these carrots in a row. The carrot in the foreground, 5.6. It's not important that the ones in the back are in focus because we know what it is, right? This next pair of images taken in the garden, here we are again. Exposure, 5.6, small number, which means small depth of field, right? This dragon, by the way, is Daisy, and the boiler that we have in our basement steams, and then the steam comes out of her mouth. But what's in focus in this image? Not Daisy, it's this pink flower here. Small number, small depth of field. Now compare that to this picture, and it's big number, big depth of field. Everything's in focus. The pink flower, Daisy, the deck behind Daisy. See the difference? Small number, small depth of field. Big number, big depth of field. Now these next few images is a series that I took at our deck. And I put potted flowers along the deck, and you can see that the ones in the foreground are in focus. And lo and behold, F4, it's the only thing that's in focus. Everything else is out of focus. So small number, small depth of field. Now watch as we progress. Here is 5.6. Maybe a little more is in focus, but we can't really see very well right now. Oh, F8. The number is getting larger. The aperture number is getting larger. Larger depth of field. F11, more is in focus. And finally, at F16, big number, big depth of field. Here's going back to, here's F4, here's F16. Now, having talked about depth of field, this really applies to close-up photography. A lot of you have asked about taking close-ups of flowers. Now, close-up or macro photography is incredibly rewarding. For me, it's like time stops. It's so rewarding because you can reveal minute details you can't see with the naked eye. So here's a few tips for close-ups. If your camera or smartphone is too close, it won't be able to focus, period. Pull back and refocus. I'll show you an example in a second. Now remember, when using macro lenses, whether they're on a larger camera or your smartphone, you have special units you can put up against your lenses, depth of field can become very shallow. Here is an image of a water droplet, a dewdrop, at the end of a blade of grass. It actually inverts the image upside down because you have forget-me-nots behind the droplet, but extremely shallow depth of field. Very important to get the focus nailed. So here's a couple more tips for close-up photography or flowers. Tripods, they sound like a great idea, but they can become very unwieldy and awkward when taking macro photos, especially of insects, because every slight movement or adjustment, you almost have to start over again. So what I suggest is practice hand holding your camera or smartphone. Be aware of your breath and relax. Insects, yes, how fun it is to take pictures of insects in your garden. Here is an insect on onion blossoms. Now my question for you is this a bee or a fly? If you're not sure, I'll give you a few tips or how you can tell the difference. Flies have short antennae. Bees have long ones. Their eyes are quite different as their compound eyes. And while they might look like a bee because of the stripes, flies only have one pair of wings, whereas bees have two sets of wings. There you go. And then be aware of your background. A soft, diffused background works the best. Case in point, this is a macro image or a picture taken of a water droplet on top of the edge of a daisy petal. The background is nice and soft, so your attention goes to the water droplet. We're going to go to the next set, framing, depth, mergers, and viewpoint. Framing. Frames help isolate your main subject from the rest of the image. We saw this one of the daisies framing the sun. Here are PVC hoops framing yours truly, going through seedlings. These are spinach seedlings in February. That's how you work with framing. Next one is horizontal versus vertical. Which way to turn your camera? The important thing is to make a conscious choice to do one way or the other. Here are some reasons why you make those choices. Horizontal images emphasize width and expansiveness. So, kind of width, but most importantly, it's a way to present calmness and stability, peace, even stillness. Boy, don't we know? We could all use that in our lives. Whereas verticals, it's more of an active statement in height, right? But it's more active in movement. Like these here. Moving flowers on the left, a grandchild holding up a flower. It's a vertical image. Her whole self is standing in that frame. And then the wind turbines over here on the right with the poppies and yellow flowers. Up next is how the F.A.D method or F.A.D adds fresh interest to your photographs. This is one of the most overlooked, underappreciated, underutilized trick for photography, and I learned it from a pro years ago. Thing is, photographs are flat. It's all about depth here. Flat photos are, well, boring. Images with depth draws your viewer in. So to create depth, that feeling of depth, you want to employ optical tricks to create that feeling of depth and distance. Here we go. Overlapping elements in the foreground adds depth, like these flowers, these fireweed, overlapping and touching the hull of the ferry going by. F.A.D, foreground adds depth. Here's what I call happy feet. So just poking my feet up into the foreground while a friend of mine gets a massage, it just adds that sense of depth. Easy peasy. Or here, this plant here, this is an actual ginseng here in Alaska. It's called Devil's Club. And then the moving water. Yep, I could have just photographed the moving water and the river and the tree there, but stepping back and adding this into the foreground adds depth. And finally, this photograph from Italy. I took this in an early morning. This is just a florist shop, closed for a florist shop. Hadn't even opened yet. But this grate that you see here adds this whole other dimension and depth. I think I might turn this into a jigsaw puzzle. What do you think? The next one, which is mergers. Now, mergers can be intentional or a basic boo-boo. Now, I'll be honest, the boo-boos are the result of not paying attention to what's in the frame. I'll show you. Here's a lovely columbine flower, but in the background, it kind of merges with the white columbine. So it's a little messy, it's a little awkward. All I have to do is just move a little bit and voila. The columbine is a great standalone image now. And the white columbine, yeah, I guess I could have picked it, is no longer a problem. See the difference? And like I said, mergers can also provide comic relief. Yep. And there we have viewpoint and camera angle. So before you actually press that button, the go button, remember, viewpoint has a big impact on composition and the message it conveys. So I encourage you to try shooting from low or high angles. In this case, this is a wild orchid, a rose orchid here in Kodiak, and I am laying on the ground to take pictures of it. Not from 5'3", but at its level. Here is a picture I took during a mosaic class I taught, and I'm just getting right down to where the student is putting in the pieces of glass. It's much more intimate, right? To get down to that level. And that includes taking pictures of grandkids. Get down to their level. Get down to their level, as in pets too, right? And finally, we get to qualities of light, rule of thirds, which we're going to break, and some bonus tips for you. Now, you may realize that photography, as in photo and graph, means writing with light. That said, many factors affect the quality of light, like your time of day, the season, the weather, atmosphere, like if it's foggy or smoggy, the angle of light. Some examples for you. Bright midday light. Check out the shadows, like really strong shadows here, even with the flowers dropping out of shadows, and right here underneath the eaves, and even right here, coming from another tree. Bright midday sun. Whoa, it can be really tough on portraits. The brightest points here. Well, by the way, so you got shadows, their faces. That's why I'm not a big fan of ball caps when taking portraits, right? Baseball caps. Big shadows over the eyes. And the brightest parts are, well, shiny parts of the forehead and the hair, and what they're all looking at, okay? The radishes. It's a pretty harsh kind of lighting. The opposite of that is soft window light. Now the trick for using window light to keep it soft is that the window light doesn't directly hit your subject, as in this pot of flowers. Different times of the year, seasons, late autumn sunrise here, whether you do apply front lighting, you know, you look at this and you go, hey, yeah, lovely flowers, but go around to the other side. Backlighting is pretty darn sweet. It's magical. Look at the hairs on the stems. And you saw this. This is all due to backlighting. Very powerful. For side lighting, this is just celery gone to seed. Celery. Beautiful, beautiful. Soft, overcast light. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Like water or droplets of dew. Soft, overcast light is great for portraits. Now to the rule of thirds. You may have heard this. We're going to cover it, and then we'll tell you also how to break it. So imagine your camera's viewfinder has a tic-tac-toe grid on it. And some smartphones and cameras, you can actually call that up or ask for a grid to be applied to your view screen. And essentially, the rule of thirds means it's not such a great idea to include your subject in the middle. But we've seen examples leading up to this of where it does work. What you want to do is to put your horizon lines on those lines, or also focus your subject on maybe where these lines cross. Okay, so you got 4 points for that, right? While composing your shot, though, this is what you do. You place, like I said, what is most important along those lines or the points where they intersect. Here are some examples to show how rule of thirds works. A photograph of a cactus, but then there's this little river of California poppies. I wanted to emphasize the poppies, so I placed them in the lower left-hand corner. Now in this case, you saw where it works to put something in the middle because you do have very strong lines. Here are two bears in a little like a pond, I should say. And yes, they are smack dab in the middle of the frame. But it works. And by the way, the bear on the right is saying to the bear on the left, no coffee after October. Okay, pun intended. In this case, you've got cabbage in the lower right-hand corner. It works that way. Here's an example of changing or adjusting or intentionally placing your horizon at a third of the way down, or however you're going to look at it, but not having it cross right through the middle of your frame. Here it is, 2/3 of the way up is our main horizon line. Okay, now to bonus tips. Edges and corners, I call it. Before you push that go button, look all around the frame. Because if something is poking into the frame from a side or a corner, or it looks weird or awkward, if so, get rid of it. So here's a case. This picture of the trees, if taken in this manner, you've got, oh my, you've got the trunk of the tree coming right out of the corner, right? Like, ow. So what I would do is reframe it so you have that space and it's not coming out of the corner anymore, right? Bonus tip number 2, the golden spiral, I call it. Now we had the rule of thirds. That's a good way to start. But there's something that's even more impactful to our brain, and that is the golden spiral. That's because it's more of a natural curve. It's the same kind of curve that you see in conch shells and sunflower seed heads. It's just a natural place to put your subject. Your brain goes, aha. Remember this? I'm going to lighten up the image so I can show you the golden spiral, how it applies to this photograph. Oh, look at that. That lady holding the camera down towards the bottom, much more natural feel to it. Or this oyster catcher on the nest. It's much more natural to our brain to see the placement of the subject in this location, this golden spiral. Bonus tip number 3. Here's the most important thing that I want to share with you today. And I learned this from a National Geographic photographer. Here's what he told me. He said, whenever you're taking pictures, whether you're on vacation, at a family dinner, a wedding, or you're hiking amongst wildflowers or witnessing the birth of kittens, pretend that when you get back from your adventure, however small or big, you cannot speak. And your photos must speak for you. In other words, tell a story. Photograph all sorts of things, from birds and buckets to food and flowers, because we connect through stories. We recall events and share them through stories. I look forward to seeing your stories. Thank you, and I'll see you in the garden. Cheers! You know, there's a story after this story, you guys. Every summer, I teach photography workshops for nature photographers that are staging in Kodiak Island and then flying west over to Katmai to photograph bears. And that's why you saw that one bear photograph. And so they're in our living room. And I remember one time, I do this about 10 times a summer. And I remember one time there was a lady named Laura, and you might recall the person in the very beginning of the video where she's jumping up and down, right? In the very beginning, she's wearing an orange shirt. And she came and she went over to Katmai and photographed bears. And when she was done, we went out and took pictures together. And then she flew home. Well, about 3 years later, Laura, there she is again in our living room. She's taking yet another natural habitat Katmai bear adventure. I said, Laura, what brings you back here? She says, when I got home, I had thousands of pictures of bears, thousands of them. And she said, that's all I had. And I came back to tell the rest of the story, to get pictures of flowers and birds and rocks and glaciers and food and people's feet and that kind of thing. So I thought that was very, very, very telling. So let me share. Yeah, it's time for the ta-da, the photo review here. This is really fun. You might get more out of this next few minutes than, well, anyway, you'll be able to apply what we've learned. And we're going to start off with, so David Stevens sent in this photograph. I think it's a peony. I can't grow peonies here in Kodiak very well. So what I'm going to do is go through and talk about it and what kind of improvements we can make. So first of all, he's got great focus on the flower core, the center, the petals. It's nice, soft light, as we learned. Soft, diffuse light is like, mwah, nice. And then he's got water droplets hanging from some of the petals and up above. A wonderful kind of texture. When it's foggy outside, when it's a soft rain, get ye your camera, your phone, and go out and play. Now let's see how we can take what we've learned in today's workshop and apply it. So in this case, because there's a pretty busy background, you can see there's some PVC pipe or some kind of hose, the stem, and so on. I went ahead and just zoomed in to fill the frame. And then another suggestion would be to remove that white dot there at the arrow. I don't know if that's a doorknob or what. You can do this with AI technology too. There's programs that will just remove the whole background, right? So what we've learned really is general tip is be aware of the background. Before you hit that go button, just look all around, right? Then Janet Bailey sent in this picture, or excuse me, Jane Casmer sent in this picture, and she's showing rows of what looks like beets or spinach, a hanging basket, looks like irises on the left, maybe some raspberries or something on the right. And let's go through and see what we can learn. So the first thing I did was straighten the image. See how it was just a little cockeyed there. Straighten the image. And remember, you can get a grid. Many apps allow you to put a grid in your field of view. So it's important to be aware of lines, like the lines, very strong lines from the top of the roof and also in her raised bed there, or her garden bed where she's got the seedlings planted. It points to what? It could be a compost bin or something. So if in fact, right, that leading lines tell people where you want them to look, then just know that, okay? So that was great example. Okay, Janet Bailey took pictures of her sunflowers growing alongside of her house. And first of all, here we go. This is a really good use of the color palette. So she's got yellow flowers against the blue building. The other thing is she's got even, soft lighting. No harsh shadows, no bright spots, and then everything else drops into shadow, dark shadows. And really good lines, really good lines. So I would just, again, what we learn, it's so powerful what lines do. Be aware of what your lines point to. Takes a little, extra few moments to kind of study what's in your field of view. Because how do you want your viewer to follow their yellow brick road, to travel around your image? So here I straightened the image, and then I looked at, looks like a propane tank and maybe an antenna tower there. It's just a little heads up, right? And then finally, what I want to show you here is this is Hannah's image. She sent it in just before I went on the air, and I just pulled some names out of the hat. So we had 3 here, and I thought Hannah's image has some really great features. So what I want to do here, is I want you guys to go in the chat and let's go through this one together. Starting with, what do you see positive, cool, unusual, or think about what you learned from the workshop, and how would you apply it here? And so I would look, first of all, it's pretty bright, beautiful yellow. And so if you have the chat open, go ahead and types in something. How about the texture? Hannah's got some fabulous water droplets, some really big ones actually, which tells me she doesn't have a lot of wind happening. I think these are azaleas or maybe rhododendrons. Maybe I should do a whole workshop on how to photograph those water droplets, because like I said, the image is actually turned upside down. And what I would say here is that she's got soft lighting. Okay, so she's got soft lighting. And I would look at maybe the background. I would say the background is a little distracting because she's got lines and dark lines poking out of different directions. And if you look at the lower right-hand corner, that leaf on the right-hand corner, it has that brown spot. So I would probably zoom in a little more, maybe, yes, Jean, that's right. I would probably zoom in a little more and maybe just on that one main flower there. And I think you'd be able to um, remove a lot of the distracting background. Now, one more tip I wanted to share with you was let me get this. Um, is that one thing, and a photographer just sent this in too as an idea, is she takes her pictures of her garden, her flowers, and so on during the course of the whole season. And then she creates a book, like a photo book. And she uses that to get the timing right. And she can write in it. She can kind of create a journal. So you can actually make a soft bound or hard bound book and jot notes about what to plant when and where the exposure is and that kind of thing. So what I wanted to share with you too is this is a photographer I particularly like, and I'm going to place these books of his in the chat that are really, really good. Now you might think, oh yeah, Marion, books. What about books? Well, you know what? There's tons of stuff out there on the internet. You can take lots of workshops, but I think there's nothing better than actually feeling a book. And so these are books by Brian Peterson. He's a fabulous photographer, very well renowned. And I actually used these books when I taught photography at university, and I still use them today, particularly the one that's called Learning to See Creatively. It's wonderful to have that book at hand and just flip through it and get ideas, creative ideas for photographing flowers or anything. What I want to ask you too is what is your biggest takeaway from today's photography workshop? For me, I learn something every time, and oftentimes I'll go out and take pictures just to illustrate one particular point. But if you have a takeaway you want to share or you'd like to email it to me, that would be fabulous, because what I'm going to ask you too is if you had any requests for other workshops. I do workshops on how to grow onions. I just wanted to do this flower photography workshop for you because right now, here in Alaska, but in much of the Northern Hemisphere, a lot of the flowers are spot on. If you ever come to Kodiak, please look me up, particularly in early July, because we have 12 or so wild orchids here. It's just like a dream come true with the camera. And finally, if you'd like to be on my newsletter list or you have any questions, you can email them through my website. So I really appreciate all of you being here. I hope you learned and are inspired by what you learned, So whether you use a phone or check this out. This is one of my collector cameras. If you use a camera like this, this is a 4x5 camera, by the way. If you have any questions, just let me know. Meanwhile, have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks again, and happy gardening, happy photography-ing. Okay, cheers.